time. This is A Life on Purpose, where we explore the Japanese philosophy of Ikigai. Hey, Lena B.
Hey,
And Martine is here.
Yes.
Our
We
guest
popped
today
in.
is Martine. Oh my goodness. This is going to be such an amazing live. We're taking a look at, Lena, I think you have something blocking the top of your a plant or something.
There we go.
So we're
New
gonna
setup.
we're gonna be talking about a life on purpose, data driven, and we have the data master himself, Martijn Lampert here. I'm so fascinated and impressed by this man's research, how he shows up, such a brilliant human being. And I wanted to kind of kick it to Lena to do a small introduction, and then Martijn, you can go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to A Life on Purpose. Martijn, it is such a pleasure to have you here. I already have questions, and for anybody who has not yet seen the topic of today, I think discussing data, humanity, Gen Z, all in one, like I have never heard of such a thing. And the fact that you're bringing all of this together in your writing and your research and everything is just, I'm sure there's so much more, but that's what we're here to tap into. To introduce myself briefly, for those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Lina Vasquez. I'm a holistic language coach, co-host of this platform, A Life on Purpose. And we have this show every Wednesday and Saturday. And then we go straight to Clubhouse afterwards and have amazing guests like Martijn sharing their wisdom, sharing their knowledge. And we're just here to learn.
Right. So Martijn, if you could just give like a brief introduction, who you are, the work that you're currently doing. And I would love for you to get it started, especially, like your TED Talk is so fascinating to me about tapping into the passions of millennials in order to achieve the sustainable development goals for the world, really, for the United Nations. And so I'd really like you to just give a brief intro and then just kind of dive right in.
Thank you for the invite, Lena and Peter. It's great to be here, absolutely. Sharing the wisdom that comes from doing research globally. I've been conducting values-based research already for more than 2 decades. So, I have quite some experience, first in the Netherlands, but then we, of course, took it global because we want to understand how the world's evolving and, of course, what's ahead. But if you look really more deeply beneath the surface of what's happening and research that, you discover a lot that sometimes remains hidden. But you have to dig deeper. You have to look at values. You have to research values. And we do that in 35 countries. We interviewed more than 275,000 people from all across the world since 2013 in 6 waves of global fieldwork. And we brought that all together, based on a holistic vision, on a holistic paradigm of doing research. So if you look at people and you take their psychology and values as a starting point, and then link it to various domains, such as sustainability or lifestyle or consumer behavior or aspirations or purpose, then it all comes together and you see the correlations and you see the patterns evolving. And of course, it's such a huge diversity. We do the research in China, we do it in Canada, we do it in South Africa, in Russia, and in Poland. So, this whole diversity of humanity, that is what is the topic of our research. And of course, we help global NGOs, but also companies and governments by stepping into the shoes of audiences. So this is being used by companies like Unilever or IKEA, but also by Greenpeace and UNICEF for, activating audiences, understanding audiences at the deepest level. And I'm really glad to be here sharing this wisdom. I have the application that we do our research with and that we unlock our data with also open on another screen. So if there are topics that you would like to dig into, purpose topics or sustainability topics, whatever, I can do it live.
Martin's got the data ready.
We can just
This is
look
exciting.
into, into these, a bit of in the heads of the people that were willing to participate in our research and learn from that.
That is really
we are
cool.
definitely diving into that.
Wow, I love it. Lena, I'm going to let you open up with the first question because there's so many things I want to ask already. We haven't even dived into anything yet, but go ahead, Lena.
That's true. No, I think, for someone, I guess sometimes I see myself in this position as the person, the agent for those watching who have no idea about anything that's going on. So I come up with the questions that I think, if like we're hearing about this for the first time, what would you ask? And I think I'm curious to know, out of all of the research that you did, I guess, what was one of the key things that stood out to you? You talked about the commonality between humanity, and no matter if these people were in China that you were doing research on, or Canada, what was one of the key standouts, the things that you said was, you dug in deeper and you didn't expect to find?
Absolutely. So, yeah, the strong relations between the passions and talents of people, and of course their behavior and their dreams for the future of humanity, and how this puzzle fits in a way that is related to all 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals. That's really astonishing.
Wow.
So, for example, just an example, if we look into fans of Beyoncé, we research that, of course, icons, celebrities in our research. Then you see that they prioritize gender equality as a Sustainable Development Goal more. So she is definitely already is an ambassador for that, but that's a way to, link this Sustainable Development Goal that is really under stress now. Also with the pandemic, the position of women is deteriorating all around the world due to the pandemic, which is heartbreaking. But she is an ambassador to that because she resonates with the topic, of course. Another example, totally different, is that fans of Pope Francis are more into ending hunger. They prioritize that. The world is in major famine now. There are even more people dying of hunger each day than of COVID. So that is also a topic that, people relate to. People who like science fiction movies, they are more into clean energy, because in these movies you see flying spaceships not polluting. So that speaks to the imagination, and then they are interested in clean energy. They could be the engineers of the future. So this is actually a tool with which you can navigate the human imagination and experience based on deep research into values, into the wisdom of humanity. And that is what we are trying to unlock.
Wow. I think that's so fascinating by using the values of people and their passions in order to do your research and show how does that connect to Sustainable Development Goals or anything in life, right? You can really apply that to anything.
Yeah.
For those in the audience who don't really understand what the Sustainable Development Goals are, how that connects to the United Nations and how that connects to them as a person watching right now, and why should they care? Could you talk about that a little bit so that it connects to the person who's listening?
Yes, absolutely. So in 2015, all world leaders, so of 197 countries, agreed upon a set of 17 common goals to be achieved by 2030. Really ambitious plan, but this is an agenda for humanity, which is about ending hunger, overcoming extreme poverty, climate action, partnership for achieving these goals, clean energy, protecting biodiversity, everything that's needed for humanity to flourish. That was achieved. This agreement was achieved by these world leaders. And of course, that is a bit of a top-down approach, because then political leaders are going to negotiate and just like with the Millennium Development Goals. This was the predecessor of it, like 10 of them. And some of them were achieved, actually. The people living in extreme poverty, extreme poverty has been cut in half in the last 2 decades. Now it's rising again due to the COVID pandemic. But that is one of the goals that indeed there was progress on. And that's why they decided to take this on under the umbrella of the United Nations, under the leadership of the then UN chief Ban Ki-moon. But now you have Guterres, Antonio Guterres, who is the UN chief, and many countries have implemented these goals and translated it to the local situation, but there's a major hurdle because the financing of these goals is not up to speed at all, and also achieving these goals is not up to speed. But still, this is the best plan that humanity has ever had for lifting humanity up. So this is something really worthwhile to contribute to.
Wow, I really love that. How that really touches a human being, and I love, like I said, that the part where you like connected from Beyonce to her fans, and see how to connect that back to like like a person's passions, who they're interested in. I love to see the data on Lena V's fans, and where and how that connects. But Lena, I'll pass it back to you.
Do you know what? I'm taking it in. I could listen to you, Martijn, all day. Like you are like the research part of me that went and did all of this. I love, honestly, one of my favorite pastimes is looking up PDFs. Peter would know on research. I guess, well, I first of all just wanted to commend you on the holistic approach of it all, because I think oftentimes when I've heard about, researchers going into looking at these sustainable development goals, it's very much from a one-sided view. But as Peter just mentioned, the fact that you can, look into somebody's passions and draw conclusions from tapping into that, and people across the world who like Beyonce and you find that they have the same kind of or similar goals for humanity, I think that says so much. And particularly with social media as well. I guess that's kind of probably a random question that comes into it, but how do you think I want to bring it to the next generation already, unless Peter, you had somewhere else to take it. But
no, that's perfect. That's perfect.
It's, what have you found in Gen Z, for example, and the next generation, how they relate to these sustainable development goals, especially with the rise of the importance of social media and platforms such as the one that we are on right now?
Yeah, so actually I gave a TEDx talk in Johannesburg at the eve of the Global Citizen Mandela 100 Festival, which was celebrating the centennial of Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela was, of course, the icon, and he's still really very popular, who stands for, building bridges that nobody could imagine could be built. He at his time, he overcame the apartheid. And still the situation is not really good now in South Africa, but he was bringing hope to the world. And if I look at the youngest generation, and that's what my TEDx talk was about, also with help from the Mandela family, I was allowed to use a drawing that Mandela made of unity, of two hands together. At the end of my TEDx talk, I used that, and he made it at old age, because in the data I see the potential of millennials really and Gen Z being the change makers, because one thing is they are the highest educated generation ever in human history. For achieving these goals, you need knowledge, you need science, you need the best solutions. They're also the best connected generation ever, of course, through social media and the digital revolution. So there's a lot of potential there. And they want to connect and work from their passions, and the vitality of the young generation is, of course, that's in every young person who's young, there's a lot of vitality and a lot of ambition, but that needs to be channeled in a way. And what we see in our research is that a lot of young people are also attracted or seduced a bit by the culture of brands and commerce and sensation, and not necessarily at first point attracted to learning about the wisdom of humanity, because a lot of young people are searching for themselves, for a life partner, for a job, you know, all that, and they don't have the wisdom yet of somebody of the age of Nelson Mandela at old age, you know. So that is something that needs to be brought together. So and that is where I think we need new types of leaders and leadership for inspiring the youngest generation, that only focusing on work or overcoming challenges or materialism, which is there, which is promoted for a lot by the advertising industry, of course. And but there's also another world of deep meaning, what it means to be human, how you can contribute to your community, how we can build a better future. That narrative has to be developed. But for that, you need leaders and who have developed themselves in a deeper way than only, well, getting rich soon and having a lot of power. So you need leaders who have been there, you know, who went through crisis and who overcame hurdles and who followed their passions and found their talents, who then can be an example to those young people, who have the vitality, who have the higher levels of education, who have the connectedness for achieving these goals. And they could do that in their work, of course, in their communities, in their families. But the way our society and the economy is structured, a lot gets in between. So that is my analysis based on this research. We do have the abundance already available of monetary means. There are billionaires who, if they would donate a lot, we could solve these problems quite fast and overcome this funding gap for the Sustainable Development Goals. But the allocation is not there yet. There are a lot of young people who don't get the education that they need. But it is there online, but we have to distribute that in the right way. The young generation really is in a pivotal moment now, and the world as well, because on the one hand we see that due to the COVID pandemic, the young generation is affected for a lot. Also, pessimism is growing amongst them. That's heartbreaking, but that is the case because they are withheld in their development. But on the other end, the pandemic and the crisis is getting people to really dig deeper into themselves and look at what they stand for in life, what they want to achieve. And it's also a wake-up call. So it's a double-edged sword. So it's a bit of a long answer, but I hope I answered your question.
Wow, you definitely did. So much I would like just to tap into from that. I want to mention a couple of things, and then Peter, I know that you probably have plenty of questions, but I think what you highlighted is incredibly important. And I guess as you were speaking, what was reflected in me is really we each carry a certain responsibility to give into the communal pool. You know, we're all part of this thing called humanity. We live on the same planet, and yet, you know, what I've noticed and looked into as well, and I know you have way more research on this, but, you know, it's like the more connected we have become technologically, actually, the more distant we have become in our beings. You look at the rise of the pandemic, what it has done, it split people up more and more. And I think it's not enough to just you know, to be connected via a social media platform, because there is so much that's grabbing your attention. And I feel, as you said, I really feel that we are at a pivotal point because, for example, I think of my sister who was 15, and I'm like the right on the cusp of being a millennial and the Gen Z. And I think of, you know, anybody who is in that age range is, first of all, thinking about teenagers these days, it is a very sensitive thing, and we need to make sure that we do have you know, that knowledge and wisdom being shared, but in a way that connects to them as well. Because just as easy it is to reach them in the negative, in terms of, as you were saying, with advertising and with you know, putting forward and highlighting, hey, no, get rich quickly, and this is what's actually important. We all know, and no matter what age you are at, our experiences, we go through these walks of life, we try and pursue materialistic things, and none of us end up happy. So why are we doing this? Why is the cycle still there? It's just not working. And so I think it's important that we step up, and especially people, I would say my age as well, really to recognize that we are on the cusp of basically making or breaking where humanity goes and how the next generation develops itself, and what values are going to be pushed in the smallest of ways.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so there's really a lot that divides us. And I've been researching that as well with my mentor, Professor Ronald Engelhardt, the founder of the World Values Survey. I had the privilege to work with him in the last 2 years. Sadly, he died 6 weeks ago. But what I learned from him was researching the polarization within cultures and also between cultures. So you can think about, in the US, of course, the polarization between Trump voters or Biden voters, but also the same dimension plays out between cultures. So, for example, more authoritarian or collectivist cultures like China or Russia, Turkey, versus more individualistic cultures like focusing on self-development, like Sweden, for example, Netherlands or Canada. So this is a focus on polarization, which is there in many realms. But while doing that research, I also was searching for what unites us. Both in China and in Sweden, both Trump fans and Biden fans. And then you come to interesting conclusions that there are higher values that are shared, that we also researched in our earlier projects together with the world's religious leaders, who brought out a call for friendship across religions. And these highest values of humanity, regardless of religion, regardless of political affiliation, are on the one hand curiosity. We are curious beings. We're called Homo sapiens, which means that we are humans who are aware that we are aware. So we know that we think. So, and that propels us forward. So this self-reflective stance is special to humans, if you also compare it to other species on this earth. So this curiosity is also what is triggering in the social media and grabbing your attention, of course. Always new things. You don't want to miss out on things. So that's something we share. And that's with the youngest generation even more so. So that's something that we share. Another value that we share across cultures, which is empathy and helping others. If somebody gets hurt, you are, in a way, also hurting. If you see somebody getting hurt, you feel it. That's also, that's how our brain works. So we are wired to be social. And these faculties combined, so empathy and curiosity, can really propel us forward in really good ways that are about collaboration. But if you see in the media or you see leaders trying to divide us, then we're pulled in totally different directions. Or if you see manipulation, or so I think we need more leadership that really taps into the highest values of humanity instead of division. And then you can find the middle ground and the middle way, which is a bit of a Taoist stance to take. But yeah, I think in this moderation lies the key to a healthy planet, a healthy society, a healthy body as well, because you can also look at the world as a body which needs a homeostasis. That's how our cells work. If we get stressed, then there's a natural response system, but if it's overstretched, then things are getting out of balance. And with the COVID pandemic, with the climate crisis, we are definitely overstretching the planet, humanity, and all of that. But we lose the sight of the whole. And that's what we try to research. So not only what divides us, but also what unites us. And then you can zoom in and out again. And that is what I think is been missing in a lot of research and a lot of thinking. This departing point from we're all united, we're all human, we share such a lot of high percentage of our DNA is just the same, and only in some respects we are different. Right. And people feel isolated, people feel alienated, feel stressed, feel depressed, all that. Because we are unable to organize the economy, society in ways that are, healthy.
Yeah, that was just such a really good way of putting it. Talking about things that unite us instead of what divides us, and then you gave some really good examples. There's definitely a disconnect between the knowledge that you were talking about and the generation that's coming up. I think we can kind of all feel it. And I have really a lot of empathy for Gen Z and a lot of hope in their capabilities. For one, at no other time in history has the faculties of human beings had been under such an abrasive attack, literally, in every aspect of a human being right now. I can't imagine being 12 years old at this time. When I was 12 years old, I lived in Jamaica. We had 2 TV stations, and the TV stations went out at midnight, and they came back at like 7 in the morning. There was no social media. I had no cell phone. So I can't even imagine being bombarded with so much information, so many options, and so many things trying to attack my faculties. I didn't grow up that way. And the other part of it is I do see because of all of the things that are happening, they're rejecting the society that's being presented in front of them. And I wholeheartedly support that, because who would want that? What kind of person would just accept that? So we actually have an amazing 15-year-old coming on next month that's going to talk to us from the perspective of Gen Z. And so actually now it's coming to me that somehow I want to connect you with this person from Gen Z and trying to see how we can navigate that conversation, because realistically, if we never get that bridge built, there's no hope for the future of our species. And I'm an advocate for this. I'm an advocate for your research because I'm an advocate for the survival of my species. My son is 7 years old. So he has to grow up in a world, where the future is going to be, and no one can tell what that looks like. I understand what you're saying about the leadership and their capacity to really embody those characteristics and those values that join us together instead of separate us. Can you talk about anyone that you see doing that currently, and what are some of the methods that they're using? Right? You mentioned Beyonce, but has your research been looking at anyone that's actually doing this, doing the things that you're saying that a leader should do within the social media realm or any other business tycoons that you've seen? Can you give us some examples of that? So in case someone's listening or watching or has a connection, we can kind of, start to expand on that a bit.
Yeah. Well, certainly there are a lot of organizations that recognize this. So the company that I'm leading, the name is Glocality. So it's the link between the global and the local, and of course the ties. So like an organization like UNICEF, for example, is advocating for children's rights globally, but they understand that you have to do that differently in Western Europe than in Asia, I think, compared to South America. So you have to tap into the cultural differences, the context, the audiences that you want to communicate with are different. The type of media, type of messaging, you have to adapt that. Another example is a company like Unilever. So they want to be a sustainable company. Cradle-to-cradle principles are important. But for that, they need, of course, also the support of consumers to do so. And with each of the brands that resonate with different types of audiences, you have to do that in a different way. So some brands resonate more with gender equality or health. Think about Dove, for example. But other brands resonate more with climate action, like Ben & Jerry's. So this is how you can look at your portfolio from a business perspective, or as a global NGO, which topic to push in which ways. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach. You need a different way of looking at things, a different paradigm. You have to recognize the diversity of values and of humanity, and then link your goals, your organizational goals to it, and be very specific then in the audiences that you want to reach or that you can attract. So it's like a methodology. Like Einstein said, you can never solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it. So now, with the Sustainable Development Goals, you need to have a higher level of thinking, which is interconnected. And that is sometimes also, if I look at science, and we use scientific methods for doing our sampling and our research and all that, but the way that science is developing, it's more and more diversified, and with a tunnel vision in a specific area and going really deep, but it's not in a holistic way. And that is sometimes a problem, because that is promoting alienation, that is indeed in the end promoting feelings of separation. You see that also with respect to work. I'm currently working on research on purpose and well-being. And we see that there are a lot of people who say, well, I'm not really doing very meaningful work. But yeah, they need to have a living and they need some income. But I think it's a pity that people are so detached from the work that they do, because it's a lot of time, college time, that they dedicate to it. Because we are disconnected from maybe or even wisdom. And there are ancient cultures, there are traditions that we have become disconnected from. And there's a lot of repression in that, of course. So I think it's good that we are free from that now, but at the same time we are losing the deeper connection.
Yeah.
And that is what is happening now. And I think the younger generation is searching for that, for a lot. Because they want to find themselves in a culture that is indeed, as you say, Peter, Pina, that is not facilitating them at all.
I think it's such a powerful thing to recognize that. And for me, the term bridge keeps coming back up of what you mentioned. It's having a bridge also, or that ability to zoom in and out, as you said, of what are your needs and who are you as an individual in this world, but also then being able to zoom out and say, okay, where do I fit in? And I think that, as you said, like disconnected, you see that because I feel as though a lot of, sometimes you see startup companies, entrepreneurs, individuals, organizations, all sometimes trying to do everything by themselves, trying to approach, achieving these goals, but from a very egocentric place of we want to be the best because we want to have the title of the best, not we want to be the best because we want to leave a legacy in the world. And I think of, the difficulty of the hierarchy of needs, of having such a divide on the global scale of, you have certain societies where we a lot of our basic needs are met and we can look for that higher, actualization, self-actualization. But then there's the complete opposite. It's such a wide spectrum of, you have people who cannot even meet their basic needs, in terms of hunger or water or safety. So how do you expect those societies to then, to bring them in and say, hey, it's time to achieve world peace? So those are a couple of reflections that came to mind. But yeah.
I think that's a really good point, Lena, into like, how do we actually bridge the gap when there is so much divide? And it's a fair thing to say that we should, and it's a fair thing to point out all of the things that connect us. But then the how, right? Because you can't just build a bridge when the surface is completely dug up and been damaged and separated for generations upon generations. It's going to take some time. It's going to take building trust, and just as you said, it's going to take leaders to kind of stand firm in their ground and demonstrate how that should be done. As someone who would honestly aspire to be such a leader as myself, stepping into the realm of social media, studying leadership for almost 2 decades now as a United States Marine, and stepping into the aspect of being an entrepreneur. If someone is in that realm, how would they even get this data on their followers, the people who consume their products, their affiliates? How would they know which SDG or which area to address instead of just going off and saying, oh, I want to solve hunger, but they don't know the data behind it? How would someone in my position or, an elevated position know where to go to find that connection between the data and where they should face their trajectory into the world?
Yeah. Well, the United Nations is actually also doing a lot of research on the Sustainable Development Goals. And there's also a collaboration of a lot of scientists, the UN SDSN network, where there's a lot of information that's publicly available on this. But still, of course, at our website, we publish a lot of our reports on this, and they are downloadable for free. So you can already get a feel of which type of audiences fit with what type of SDGs. It's a new way of thinking that you have to first get accustomed to.
Okay.
And then, of course, we are a company. So if organizations are interested in really getting into the nitty-gritty, then of course they can reach out to us and we can make those type of analysis and make this available. And that's our business model. But as I said, we share a lot, and that's also our vision, because it's a new type of thinking that we think is highly relevant now at this time in history. What I also wanted to share is that we did a study last year. It was 75 years of the anniversary of the United Nations. That was, of course, established after a devastating World War II, the former major crisis. And we saw that actually people globally have more trust in the United Nations than in their own government or in their own parliament. With some exceptions, but in general, this is the case. And well, I was thinking, why is this? Why do we see this? Because people are projecting, of course, a lot of their ideals also into. It's the United Nations. These words mean something. People are longing for a higher level of connection of humanity that is rarely expressed, of course, in you. They're not performing very well in keeping world peace, but they are trying. And if we look at the people who do trust the UN versus people who don't trust the UN, you learn really interesting things. Because oftentimes it is stated that people who trust the UN are cosmopolitans and are detached from their national cultures and are globalist elite or whatever. But that's not the case. People who have trust in the United Nations, which is a really large group, are both rooted very well in their own nation and localities. So they're proud of their nation and recognize the interdependence of nations and have that combined. So they have actually a global view on the world. People who don't trust the United Nations are alienated. They don't feel connected with their own nation, with their own community, nor with the world at large. And they are, on average, unhappy, disconnected. And as I said, well, one of the major faculties of humanity is the need to belong to a larger whole. So this distrust that is playing out in many realms. If you look at people who have distrust in institutions, it's oftentimes all over the board. These people don't trust the government, don't trust multinationals, don't trust NGOs, don't trust people on the ordinary people. But they are deeply feel disconnected. And this is also the case with the young people for a lot. And that is actually heartbreaking because so it's not about the solution lies in a nationalist approach or a globalist approach. No, the solution lies in a connected approach, which is contributing to the health, also the mental health of people. So then we have to research, why is it that people feel this disconnect? And that is, well, if people don't feel they are fulfilling their purpose in life or don't see so that's the link with the topic of this talk, of course, is people who have a lot of distrust in institutions don't feel that they are connected with their purpose. They don't generally love or accept themselves as they are because they're not in a place where they think they can break themselves. So yeah, and that then leads to an analysis, I think, that needs to be made, and I'm working on this topic. What is wrong with society, with our culture, with our economy? I'm curious what you think about this from your perspectives.
I'll let Lena go, or else I'll just.
No, go ahead, Peter. Go ahead. Well, the thing that you know, Martijn, I'm the linguist, so I always look at things from a language perspective first. And I think when it comes to disconnect or why people, you know, what is wrong with society, what is wrong with the institutions, I think just from the fields that I've looked into in my life so far, which have been law, psychology, and languages, I think one of the key issues is the speed at which institutions innovate themselves or can be innovated, or for example, laws can be updated, the way that certain organizations function. When they're on a grander scale, they take a lot longer to be updated and essentially catch up to the actual times than how people innovate themselves and how communities innovate themselves. So I think that's one perspective that should be looked at. And the other thing I think is, I think the world is becoming a lot more understanding and connected in terms of understanding each other's cultures. You know, you have people who nowadays it's a lot easier to immerse yourself in another culture, to understand somebody else's point of view, connect through their language. But as you said, it's a very key point. I think languages and the cross-cultural communication is key, because looking at it from my world, when I create posts or when I have clients from different places, I communicate a little bit differently, because the language, if you understand somebody's language, you understand a lot about their history, about what shapes their beliefs, what shapes the way that they speak and how they think. And I think that is an integral part of, you know, even building anything for society. You first have to understand the society.
Yes.
And I think there's a gap in the understanding and actual communication between the people who are growing up in this society, in this community, wherever we look at it, and what exists to serve that. I think there's a huge disconnect. And we see that across many different realms.
And I really, really love that point, Lena, about like using language and using the connection from the other side, because as we see, like, you know, a lot of this is tied up into the political realm and the legal realm and all the other things that slow down the funding for the UN's SDG aspirations. And you talked about it in the beginning, Martijn, when you were talking about the top-down approach. And really, that's why I really enjoyed your TED Talk, where you were talking about it from the bottom-up approach, where Gen Z, like, they're really the key to achieving all of these things that really enhance the survival of our species. Climate change, you know, eradicating socioeconomic disparity, hunger, and all the things in the world that are just, it's ridiculous that we have that much poverty and hunger in the world, but when the amount of resources that we have far outweigh the need. I'm sure that your data and your research shows this. And I really love the business model of taking a look at the data, because, for example, like right now, Lena and I are working with some partners, philanthropists, social media activists, and spiritual leaders who want to participate. And I'm so glad that we're having this conversation now, because it's not actually connected to any data. It's really just connected to our own aspirations of wanting to do good. But if we can tie that into the data and say, hey, this is where you can have the most bang for your buck. This is where you should be really targeting your audience. This is really where the focus should be for this aspect of SDG. That would be humongous. And I would really love to tap into that resource and be able to connect you with some philanthropists, people in social media, so we can actually use the platforms, the social media, for social good. That's really like the connection that we're really trying to make in that sphere. Have you been doing any of that for social media? And if so, what does that look like? Like, how do we tap into that, space? And especially using the language, like Lena said, that would be like a really wide spectrum that we can close the gap.
Absolutely. So, well, I have like 20 years of experience in doing values-based research and applying it for lots of different organizations. And what I observe is that oftentimes the organizations and the leaders can also be in the way of their own success.
Wow.
Because they are only in their own bubble and way of thinking. So they need to connect to other paradigms, ways of thinking, narratives, as you could say, in order to break open their potential and to reach out to new audiences. But for them to realize that, to really live that, to grasp it, they need to take the helicopter view, and we guide them in that. So what oftentimes is the case, for example, you have activists that are driven by post-materialist values. So that are really very much emancipated and egalitarian in their approach. And those people are there, of course. But in their way of speaking, it's often the rebel archetype that then speaks. And we know that if you look at Asia, for example, where lots of millennials are, most of the millennials are in Asia, actually, and Gen Z, there, if you are a rebel, you are an outcast. So you have to speak a bit of a different language. If you're a rebel type, and your communications taps into that archetype, and we do a lot of research into the realm of archetypes, which are, of course, original storylines that keep popping up in history throughout time. You have the ruler who can be a tyrant or a wise ruler like King Solomon. So you have, but you also have the rebel, and Jesus was in a way a rebel, of course, and he was a king.
Jesus as a rebel. I like that. I want to have that on a t-shirt.
Yes, yes.
Also, yes, but in a different way, because but you also have the archetype of the creator or the hero who dares to stand up.
Right.
And you see that in different parts of the world, different world regions, different archetypes are appealing, and other are detracting people. But also within countries, you see that. So for example, so you have to be really nuanced in that, because in order to really have success, you might need to tap into a bit of a different narrative, a different type of storytelling, because otherwise you keep preaching to the same people and your own community, and that's is only limiting you, if you get what I mean. So that is what I learned. And for that, data are pivotal. Because if you don't have data on this, it stays blah, blah, and nobody is convinced. Because you need to have this conversation internally with your colleagues. Or if you're in a multinational team, then people say, well, it's not like that here in Japan. It's totally different than here. And then it's a Babylonian chaos of languages. So with our data, which cover 35 countries, we have a type of a common way of doing analysis and creating world maps on the fly with the application that we have of the hero archetype or the rebel archetype. And then you realize that, okay, how we are now promoting gender equality, for example, in Sweden, will not work in Indonesia, and we have to do it a bit different, and then we can help these women instead of, well, alienate them from the communities. This is really important. And that is why this taps into the human faculties of, on the one hand, curiosity, because with this research you learn a lot and we share a lot. And on the other hand, also being able to step into the shoes of others, which is actually empathy in practice. And then, of course, staying true to yourself as well. So you may want to adapt some things, you may not want to adapt, because those are your principles, that's what you stand for. Of course, that's a good thing, if it is also a conscious choice and not something unconsciously happening that you keep doing for a long time, and that's only limiting you. So that reflection needs to take place, and that's what we facilitate with workshops or with new research.
Wow. I think that's so incredible. And you know, I just want to like scream out of happiness, because this is the thing, like holisticism. We, you know, what you're talking about, I'm just hearing, you know, the multifacetedness of looking at history, looking at the archetypes, applying it to the modern world, applying it to things like language, to applying it to politics. It's all always intertwined. And I think that educating the world on this, having knowledge is power, using knowledge is even more powerful. And if everybody could understand and have that space, no matter what age you are, where you work, of having that understanding of, hey, this is the world, you know, this is what's going on internally, so that I can apply that into the external world. I think that would, in my eyes at least, create such incredible change. Because it's the thing, I think people are taught one side of communication, which is, this is how you speak, this is how you become confident, this is how you can, you know, get your message out there, whether you're an advertising agency or you are a public speaker or you are a teacher at a school. But the other element that I think isn't, you know, what you were explaining isn't really being tapped into properly is the listener, the receiver. Communication is actually 80% about the person receiving your message. And I think there's that disconnect of, I told them, I said this, I'm here with my signs, why is no one listening? Because you're not connecting to the way that they understand it, how, you know, people from different backgrounds would hear that message.
Yeah. And what is, I think, also what builds upon that is the way we do research. It's both visual and with language. And the way we present it is also like that. Because you, in 20 years of research, I learned that if you show a table with numbers, you're communicating with some faculties of people who may have developed those faculties, which is about statistics or not. But we also visualize the archetypes, and we have built an application with which you can, which is totally visual. So with 200 lifestyle items, totally visual, values visualized, archetype visualized. So that speaks to the, not only to the rational hemisphere, but also to the creative and more imaginative part of the brain. And then, people really get it. Because only seeing it doesn't make, is no guarantee that you get it. And this is how it works. So if we present these type of things or talk, just like we're doing now, and I'm not even making journeys, but here, maybe I can show this. Here you have, for example, some of those aspirations and archetypes and all that. You can click on those, and then it plays out the whole imagination behind it.
Right.
And you can really make millions of journeys with this. And a journey is stepping to the shoes of a specific audience. So that is a bit how it works. And we do these researches in online panels globally in 35 countries. And we make sure that it's representative for the age, gender, and education distribution in that specific country. So we use country-specific quota. And we also look at trends throughout time. And there you see some really interesting aspects, that there's a global rise in environmental concern, for example, since 2013. And even more so amongst the young. And what we also see is that if we look at Gen Z and compare those with young people, like at the start of our research in 2013, they are more emancipated and more pro-gender equality, and less often agree with the statement like the father should be the boss of the household, which is declining amongst the youth. And with generational replacement, you see that youth are more discovering male and female aspects within themselves as well, and bridging those polarities. And it's really hard to do that in Hungary or in Russia, of course, or in China. But we see this happen internationally. So there is progression in that sense. And if values change, then also behavior changes. And values are deeply ingrained in people. And we see with the COVID pandemic and crisis and the effects on humanity that people even more so want to have more equality. Because the inequalities are so prominently visible now. So wealth again flowing more and more towards billionaires. So we did research on that, and we see that the calls for more income equality globally are on the rise. Because this is about how to distribute the abundance that there is available on this planet, which is really a huge injustice that people are living in such extreme poverties. But in the world population, this priority is growing, whether it's being put on and taken on by leaders. Of course, now there are discussions about taxation of companies and abolishing tax paradises, and those topics are put on the agenda, but there could be a boost in that if we look at what the developments are in the world population. Also in the field of climate, we see the same happening. In the world population, there's this trend. So now it's time for leaders to act and take the lead. Also with respect to gender equality, we see those trends coming up. So now it's time for leaders to act upon that. But we need well-developed and wise leadership to do that. And I want to make the distinction between intelligence and wisdom. Because, I think with intelligence you can also manipulate a lot. But if you combine it with the highest values of humanity and such a program like the Sustainable Development Goals, and with the development of humanity and with purpose and people flourishing, then it becomes wisdom. And I think the world needs more wisdom than intelligence, actually, at this point in time. And artificial intelligence won't be the solution because it's not wisdom.
Right.
Woo! We're going to quote that, Martijn. We're going to quote that.
Martijn.
I think, Peter.
I really love that. And I really love the transition that we're about to make to Clubhouse, where you talked about one thing working on one platform won't work on another, in one country and another. And that's actually why we have our On Purpose series, where we're trying to make that connection that you talked about, show up as the leaders that we would like to see, like being the change that we want to see in the world. And I'm pretty sure that this is not the last of our conversation with you. We would definitely like to help to close that gap with you. I actually typed you up a text message here. I'll send it to you shortly after, on some ways that we're already working on to get you involved. And I would really love to be a part of what you're doing to expand how we can use the data, because there are limitations in everything. Just like there are limitations on what we're doing on social media, there are limitations on what you can gather from the data, right? And especially with the audience, the control measures, all of the different things that go into your analysis. And so if we can bridge that gap between all the different facets that combine us together, especially if we're on the same mission to enhance human consciousness and to elevate our species, then there's no reason why we can't do that together. And so right now, actually, as we're going to build a bridge, we're going to build a bridge from Instagram Live to Clubhouse. So, Martijn, I'm going to give you the last word if you'd like. We're going to jump right from here, jump right into Clubhouse. The room should already have been started. And then we're going to bring this same conversation about how to use that data. What does the data say about what we value in life? Because it's evidence, right? It's the things that we're doing. And then how can we change that narrative to live a life on purpose and enhance our species? And Martijn, I'd like to give you and Lena the last word before we kind of end for today.
Well, the last word is a word of gratitude to both of you, because it's always stimulating to share the knowledge, and I'm always looking for platforms indeed to share this, because I have the feeling and the urge to share it now at this point in time. And if people want to download reports, then it's glocalities.com where you can find those reports, and feel free to reach out to me, because I'm very willing to assist and educate.
Right.
Thanks for being on this platform. It's my first Instagram Live.
It's amazing.
I just put up my Instagram account for this specifically, because normally I'm on LinkedIn,
Oh, that's amazing.
But yes, a great opportunity.
We got to bridge the gaps.
Love it.
We got to
That's
bridge the
it,
gaps.
bridging the gaps, bridging the
Yeah.
gaps. Thank you so much, Martijn, honestly. Dankjewel. Thank you.
Ah, graag gedaan.
My little Netherlands. No, honestly, for anybody who just joined in, definitely rewatch this live because just the wisdom that was brought in, I'm going to say wisdom of how the way that you could draw between just the lived experience and the empirical experience of the science and the data that you found from humanity is just incredible beyond anything that I've ever seen. So thank you so much for for gracing us with your presence here, and I'm very excited to just learn more about it, and definitely we need to connect further on this because that's it. I don't even have a reason.
Yeah, I know.
Let's do that.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Great.
And we'll see you all on Clubhouse.
On
See you
Clubhouse. All right. Peace, guys.
Bye.
Much love. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.